Welcome to Phoenix Rising with Dr. Z. This podcast is all about conversations about healing and rising from the ashes of your grief and trauma. I'm your host, Dr. Christina Zampatella. It is my sincere hope that this podcast is going to give you the words and the understanding to help you heal through your grief and trauma. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Phoenix Rising with Dr. Z. I'm Dr. Christina Zampatella. I am your host, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today for yet another episode where we're going to cover a topic I have not covered at all before. I'm going to be talking with Ms. Perlyn Severe. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist at the Center for Grief and Trauma Therapy, and that's how I know her, and I'm so lucky to spend time with her and call her a colleague and a friend. And I'm going to have her give a little bit of a background, and the topic we're going to be covering is the impact of loss on couples and families. So, Perlyn, introduce yourself, a little bit about your background.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Perlyn Severe. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the states of Delaware and Pennsylvania. And I also have an advanced certification in substance abuse. So both of those are my passion. I love to work with families that are healing from both grief and substance abuse. So we are discussing today the impact of loss on families and on couples. And Dr. Z, that is really, like you see, we have couples coming in every day calling about how to cope with a loss after, they've been married for years. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 year or 30 years that they've been together.
Yeah.
The impact is so profound that couples are coming in saying we need help.
And I think that there are couples therapists out there, lots and lots and lots, but really having couples therapists who specialize in understanding the true deep impact of grief and loss on the family system and on the subsystems within the family, such as the partnerships. And also, I think how the trauma might be playing a part and understanding the different way that different people grieve and blah, blah, blah. All these things are hard to find a clinician that actually has that background. So you are in a very specific niche with your background. And then understanding, was there addiction before? Is there addiction
now.
Serving, now? Yeah. Are there all the things, which we won't be able to get into all of it today, but I think we'll be able to get into a lot that gives people something to look forward to understanding a little bit more deeply. And then we're also going to make sure that everybody leaves today with understanding what are maybe some things that they can take with them to improve any conflict that might be happening or any ruptures that might be happening in the relationships at home. And how to know when, is it maybe time to get some professional support, because not everybody needs help, right? There's losses, all different kinds. So tell us a little bit about your training. Where'd you go to school, and then what kind of work have you done in the past? And then we'll go ahead and dive into talking about couples. Sound good?
Sound great.
Okay.
So I went to Drexel University in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is really rich. It's like the hub for family therapists. It's like, Sal Minuchin, Ivan Bozani-Naj, who's the founder of contextual therapy, was my professor. So it's really rich in family therapy because social workers had the platform, and then family therapists kind of came after. And Philadelphia is really historic, and Drexel, really drove that home that, we're the trailblazers for family therapy in Philadelphia. So I have really a special place in my heart for Philadelphia. Yeah. I'm not from Philadelphia, but my education and my career, really, I think I was blessed to be in Philadelphia and being taught by some of the best professionals in the field of family therapy. And family therapy is unique in the sense that we look into the family. We are I had somebody that came to me and they was like, I want to see you, but I don't want to talk about my family.
You don't exist outside of your family. So,
yeah,
but
exactly.
What do you think they were saying when they said that?
It was too much. It was too much trauma.
Yeah.
We all have a family.
Yeah.
We all have a past. And people have different experiences with their family. That's one thing that does not discriminate. It goes across all races, all gender, and all socioeconomics. And some people just do not want to address it because the trauma is so impactful. So if you're coming to a family therapist, understand your family is going to be discussed.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So that's
It's just the
my
timing,
feeling.
right?
Yeah.
We honor their thing, but how can you ignore that? Because that's been such a huge part of what has led them to develop not only understanding who they are in the world, but and their clan and their attachments. Because there's never grief without attachment. You can't have a separate set of or a sense of deprivation if you weren't attached to it in the first place. Well, how you're attached to people and maybe other things has everything to do with attachment style, which has everything to do with parenting and family. So you can't talk about grief without talking about attachment.
Exactly.
And you can't talk about attachment without talking about how you were brought up.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my training. So the family piece. And as I ventured out, in my professional career, I started working with children primarily for the first 15 years of my career as an in-school clinician, and as a mobile therapist, working inside of the schools of Philadelphia with children that were presenting with, ADHD, all kind of issues that the school identified. And that was for about 15 years. About 2015, I made the decision that I love working with children, but I wanted to venture off more towards adults, young adults. And around 2015, that happened, and I went into drug and alcohol. I had an internship at the Keystone Center in Chester, and I loved it. And I kind of just went into that whole world of DNA. And I remember a supervisor that I had said, "You're going to see within the next 5 years, everybody's going to be addicted to something." And I thought to myself, what? What do you mean? You're just saying she said everybody's going to be addicted to something, whether it's food, whether it's shopping, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's gambling, and you've seen the trajectory of self-medication and, people using that as a clutch. And I don't know if that's what she meant back then, but I thought that it was really interesting. And that's how I got into the space of DNA.
Okay.
And grief and loss in 2023, when I came to you, I was always interested in grief and loss, but didn't really know how that would play out because of my personal journey with grief, in my family. I got an interest in it then on how families grieve and the impact, because I lost my cousin sister. She was my cousin, but more like a sister. And I saw the impact that it had on my family. Didn't quite know, how to help, what to do, but started getting an interest in that area because in 2022, after COVID, people started talking about grief. In my opinion, it was just because a lot of people lost people. And that's how I ended up, having an interest in it. And it just all worked out that I, met you, and I was just like, Center for Grief and Trauma. And I thought that was really, interesting when I saw what I saw. It was like on Indeed. And I took a chance and, reached out to you, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yep. I'm very glad for it too. And I'm watching you, broaden and deepen as we all should in our careers, right? You always have to broaden and understand and educate and deepen where you go. And just when you think you've gotten to a place of oh, I got this, and you're going oh, there's all that other shit over there I'm supposed to be doing too, or maybe I can learn more about that. So you're always been so open to all that. Matter of fact, sometimes flying a little too close to the sun, trying to get all the things, all to the point we ran out of room on your wall. And I'm like, we got to figure out what you're going to do. You're like, I got this stack over here of all these other certifications. I'm not going to put them all up. And I'm thinking, because it's going to be wallpaper by the time you're done putting them all up there.
Because there's so much that we want to do.
Yeah.
We go in this field to help.
Yeah.
Right? But I think honing your niche is important at this point for me. And that's what I'm more focused on.
So let's talk about that. So let's, can we first start maybe talking about couples? Because that's pretty unique, whether or not marriage partnered, whatever that might look like, and whatever configuration that is. So what do you feel like is one of the primary challenges for a couple who have lost, let's say, another family member, such as a child?
So what I find is that they're both grieving, profound grieving, very, very hurt. Like you're talking intense pain. And if they already had a pattern of coming together, as a couple when things are hard, if they huddled, if they had that teamwork approach, that's a plus. But if they were already distant, this is a situation where they may become even more distant. So depending on how they resolve conflict in the beginning, and what their pattern was in that system, you'll see it play out in a crisis situation. So if they're a volatile couple, if they tend to, just argue all the time and that's the way they communicate, then you'll see it play out in this crisis. If they were a couple that, came to each other initially, you may see that come out in their trauma. So it's depending on how, so the grief will exacerbate how they already resolved issues.
Gotcha. So if you got a couple, let's say that you have a couple that often could turn towards one another if there was a rupture. And what I mean by that is like there was an argument, right? Or somebody did something not so great. But they've learned how to turn towards each other during those ruptures and mend those ruptures. Are you saying that when there's an additional stressor put on that couple, for whatever reason, that skill that they had before the loss and the way that they've navigated the attachment within the relationship can be a protective factor?
Yes,
okay.
It definitely can be a protective factor. And I find with couples like that, they have this me and you against the world approach. So they're not trusting. They kind of start, it's just them. And they take longer to come to couples therapy because they think they just could rely on each other.
How would they know that they need to reach out for help?
Well, something or somebody probably is usually their children will act out is another thing that comes and says, this is not normal. They'll build their cocoon around each other, but something else would happen. Another stressor, whether it's work. Like right now I have a family and his job told him, something is off with you. He thought everything was fine. And his wife, so his job brought it to his attention that he needs, to get some help because they could really build a cocoon around themselves and not trust the world. And it's just us, and you find these couples are like constantly lamenting about what happened, and they take it very personally. Like it was something that they didn't do.
Okay. So they'll sometimes ruminate together.
Yeah.
It sounds like that might feed each other's rumination. They won't reach out for help outside of their cocoon, like you said, and then potentially even leading to dysfunction within the relationship. And then essentially it comes out in other ways. And they may not even recognize that the core of it has stemmed from maybe a loss or a trauma. But they're saying, oh, I'm coming in here because, we're having some struggles with our kids. But then when you start looking into the history, or just like when we go back and we really start looking at what is the core issue, you guys have been kind of navigating all of your stressors like this, and guess what? There's all this grief and trauma, and as a family, you haven't even navigated this yet.
That's exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be a marriage family therapist now.
That's exactly.
Mic drop. Done.
You just really that's exactly what it is.
Literally just became a marriage and family therapist. There are so many people in the room that I don't know how you do it. I used to do couples work, but not like you do. And I just was like, what the heck? There's a lot of people here. There's 2 people. There's a lot of people here, but it's tough. But when you have individuals, they're coming in and talking to you about, like I've had them bring in their significant other or their child or whatever, just for like a session or 2. And that changes the whole
dynamic.
the
That's
whole
right.
way that you see everything.
That's right.
So if we're the kind of couple that we are attached, securely attached to one another, but we don't have that whole us against the world thing, but we do have we're a team. How might that look different than this other couple who are like, hey, it's us against the world, but we don't trust the rest of the world? They're like, yeah, we trust the world, this other couple. And we're like, we trust the world, but it's us, together. But now we've had this, massive loss or trauma come into our lives.
Those couples, they'll come to therapy, they'll reach out to therapy, but you'll find that they become codependent on each other. Sometimes they like, and especially if substances are involved, you'll find that they'll hide that the other person is, drinking a little more, or they're smoking marijuana a little more, because we're a team. We're still
so this
a team.
will protect.
It'll protect.
It's a little enabling, hence the codependency.
Exactly,
Okay.
it's a little enabling.
Okay.
So those couples that come and they're ready to talk, you'll find that as I'm starting to ask questions about patterns and something else, and they'll hide it for each other more.
Why?
Because they're a team.
Yeah, but what are they getting out of doing that?
That's the relationship that they have established amongst each other. They have their own system.
Okay, got it.
That's their culture. The couples have their own culture, their own system. And I think as a couples therapist is really understanding, and you're not going to get it right away. It's a lot of asking questions and asking questions, and then you'll find out what the culture is for them.
If I am a spouse or partner of someone who has some kind of addiction, and I'm a person who's codependent, what am I getting out of it by hiding your addiction? Yes, this is how our relationship is built up, but I've got to be there's something I'm getting out of this, or I wouldn't be doing it, right? So what are some things that that person may be getting out of that?
I'm a good spouse. I am loyal. I'm your ride or die. I'm here for you, even at my detriment. I'm going to be here for you. And you enable that behavior because you think that's love. Oh. So is their concept of love and commitment.
And that can come from places like where they grew up, maybe in a family where...
You said it earlier, attachment.
Attachment.
Yeah.
So I'm going to attach to you no matter how dysfunctional you are because, I don't want to lose you. Or I grew up in this other family where it was split off. Yeah. And I don't want to...
And, I've seen that more. And it's so interesting. But I've seen it a lot with husbands doing it for their wives.
Why? Why that?
Protecting their wives of all kind of pathological behaviors.
Oh. Do you think that's a cultural thing or a gender socialization?
I think it's, maybe that protective, like I have to protect, I'm the man. I had a wife, she was physically abusing their daughter. The husband hid it for years because he didn't want her to go to jail.
Wow.
So I see that more men will, women are quicker to call it for what it is, but men will. So we really have to assess what's going on and read between the lines and keep talking, establish a rapport, and hopefully they'll come out on their own and say, this is really after sessions, what's going on.
Let's say they are a functional couple, and whatever that means, right? Everybody has their own crap. But let's say I'm not I don't have an addiction or I'm not abusing another person. But we have this stressor on the relationship. What might we see in a couple that is functioning well and is healthy when there's been a loss, such as a parent or a child or a sibling or, a cousin who's like a sister.
Yeah. Depression, sadness.
Okay. Depression or sadness?
Both.
You could see both.
You could see both. So sadness leading to depression, you can't shake it. One person not being able to do what they used to do, and the other one is saying, well, why can't you just go to the supermarket? You used to be able to buy groceries.
Okay.
And now I'm doing everything. I'm doing all the chores in the house.
And how does that affect the quality of the marriage?
It starts to get unbalanced, And sometimes things are not always balanced. Sometimes you'll have couples that one does more, but it'll start to look more like
more discrepant.
Yeah, it's more of a dichotomy, and one is starting to feel overly taxed. Like I'm doing everything. I'm taking care of the kids. I'm grocery shopping. I'm paying bills because you can't seem to get it together. What is wrong with you?
Now, what if they are going through what would be considered a normative grieving process, where there's going to be real acute grief at the beginning for a lot of people, and then gradually over time there's like a reduction of intensity and duration of the feelings. But again, at the beginning, we would see people who aren't functioning very well sometimes, depending on the loss. So in couples where it's kind of normative, whatever that means for each person, right? What might happen? What might be some things that are presenting in the relationship? We have the imbalance there that might happen, but is there ways in which it's not detrimental to the relationship, where they're able to turn to each other in a healthy way?
And that's the goal ideally. But
Right.
if it's in balance like that, now the potential for resentment to come in and settle, unless that's talked about. So you might see one going out more and not wanting to deal with that and not argue and say, you know what, you're just not the same. I'm tired of telling you. And then you'll see the distance creating. They're going more like this. One is always out, one is always home. So they'll find their own ways to cope within that dysfunction. Because eventually somebody's going to try to care for themselves in whatever way that looks like.
That's got to be hard. What if there's no dysfunction?
As far as
let's say that the relationship is functional and healthy. Each person is mentally resilient and strong and healthy and doesn't have any kind of pre-existing, maybe either mental illness or maladaptive behaviors. Like, what if we have a healthy family and there's a massive loss? What might happen? What might be normal that we would expect? And I know normal is such a shitty word to use, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, what's the normal process?
Yeah,
of
they might
grieving?
not even come into your, let's just say they're not even coming in to see you. But as you know about families, let's just say that they're not coming necessarily for help. But what might we see in like those kinds of situations?
So they come together.
Okay.
As a family.
How do they come together?
They talk about the bereaved.
So they open it.
They open it up. It's not we can't talk about it. Healthy families will support each other. They have flexibility. They have tolerance for each other's pain.
Okay. That's a cool statement. Can you explain it? Because I don't know if everybody, because some people like tolerance. Well, how far do I have to take it? But I hear you. I'm hearing flexibility and tolerance and understanding and open communication. How would you define tolerance?
Tolerance is my brother or my sister is struggling, right?
Okay.
I'm able to put my feelings aside for just that moment and be present. It's not about me.
Okay.
So, I'm grieving too, but just for that moment, because I love and I care for you and I want to demonstrate that. And we have a flexibility. We're open to, being, sometimes I'm going to need you more. Sometimes you're going to need me more. Isn't that nice?
It's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. I want to bottle that up. I think in our work, we're so used to seeing people that are suffering in such ways, and a lot of times coming from places where they aren't as healthy, because a lot of times healthy families and healthy, relationships, they don't end up in therapy, right? So you're in my world, we understand it, we can see it, we can pull the strengths out of the clients that we have, and whatever that is. But a lot of times we're working with people who are really suffering. Yeah. So that sounds great.
Isn't that
and that's what we're working for in therapy, right? Is to increase that.
Exactly.
So as a therapist, how do you help increase resiliency, flexibility, and tolerance in a couple that is struggling with that?
I first off see how their pattern of relating was before
pre-existing functioning.
Pre-existing functioning.
Okay.
So the assessment, constantly assessing, and you could kind of tell like where they are with the flexibility. So if the husband can't stand to see the wife cry, he's just tolerating it because of his discomfort.
Oh, okay.
So it really depends on how they interact, or if they come together, if they come apart, how they handle things prior to. That could give me an idea of, is there flexibility? Is there tolerance for discomfort? Is there an emotional give and take? Can I be present for you and still, for that moment, say, I'm here for you. And then the next day or 2 days later, I'm here for you, vice versa, So it just all depends.
So that'd be a couple that has a lot of strengths to build on. And then maybe they're taxed with this massive trauma. Maybe there was a murder. Maybe there was a very I've seen more things than anybody can imagine of different ways that people have passed, whether it's a chronic illness, a terminal illness, a violent crime, a very violent, violent situation, aggression.
So how do you handle that when couples do come to you? Like how?
No, I don't work with couples.
Okay. So that's just.
I stopped doing that.
Okay.
I stopped working with couples before COVID because I was also doing assessments. I got to a point in my career where I was like, okay, I'm trying to do all the things. I was Perlyn in a previous life, but I could not handle it as well as Perlyn does.
No, I can't do that.
I had such interest in so many different things, but eventually ended up saying, okay, like we got to narrow our focus. And as I'm moving forward in my career, it shifts, but I'm getting more and more, okay, this is where I'm at. And then surround myself with people who are doing all the other things that I wish I could do that I'm not, But when I was working with a couple, I'm going to tell you one thing that pops up a lot, and I talk about this when I present, is you've got different types of grieving styles and communication styles, which are often very gender and culturally socialized. So, for example, women may be more what we would call, and everybody can be. This is not a black and white situation. You know what I mean? This is a spectrum. But it might be that the person's more of an intuitive griever. So they lean into their grief. They want to talk about it, chew on it. They want to explore their feelings. They want to engage in navigating, finding some sense of equilibrium emotionally and psychologically. And the way that they do it is often like interpersonally, right? Or creatively. Then on the whole far other end of the spectrum, there's instrumental grievers. Those are people who like to pull the pieces of their lives back together. People who need to learn new skills, take on new roles, maybe like to tinker around in the garage and do things as a way of processing it internally, not necessarily processing it externally. And neither one of those is wrong. It's just different. And what we do know is that a combination of the two of those surmount crises better. So if we've got somebody that's real far on the spectrum, if there's a way of maybe increasing flexibility in their grieving process, it allows them to kind of go back and forth and like deal with putting their lives back together, and then also leaning into their grief in whatever way that means. But in a society that are like, men don't cry and, women don't get angry, and again, and it's a blanket statement, but I think you know where I'm coming from. Part of it is helping expand the emotional vocabulary of the individual and also their coping skills so that they can be, they have a greater repertoire in which they can find a way to integrate the loss into their lives.
Thanks for listening to Phoenix Rising with Dr. Z. If this episode helped, subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. We'll see you next time.